I'd like to welcome you all to UMass Boston's Small Business Summit. So we're going to get started right away. I had a nice long speech written, but instead I'm just going to introduce my boss. I'd like to introduce Chancellor Catherine Newman.
Well, that was a really short speech, Phil. Sure, there's more to say than that. I want to begin by thanking Phil Carver for organizing this whole effort, which has been a lot of work, but very much worth it. We are eager here at UMass Boston to become a centerpiece and a home and a support structure for small business, especially in our own neighborhood. We foresee tremendous fluorescence for small business, especially as Bayside begins to spin up. I'm sure there are going to be several very large companies there, but there are going to be opportunities for startups, for businesses in restaurants and dry cleaners and just all kinds of plumbers and all kinds of businesses. And part of the reason why we wanted to inaugurate this summit now is so that we are better prepared to support the small businesses in our neighborhoods for the opportunities that will arise there. So let me just begin by saying what you all know very well, which is that small business is really the beating heart of the American economy. Although much attention goes to the large businesses, small business is by far the largest source of employment in the United States, and it is clearly the gateway for new immigrants, for families who are moving around the country, for ethnic minorities, and hence for us, this is really an important sector that we should be paying more attention to. But we all know that there are lots of complexities to mounting a small business. Economies of scale are difficult to achieve, and part of what we'd like to do here, especially if we are successful at winning a bid for the Small Business Administration Development Center, which we will be bidding for, is to help you with developing some of the practices that accommodate economies of scale, like common HR practices that can support businesses instead of having each one develop its own payroll systems and so on, which can be quite expensive. Lending, very important. We are so pleased that the banking industry turned out in full force this morning. Lots of people from the banking community here, and they are the lifeblood that supports small business. We recognize that the employment opportunities in small business can benefit from getting to know our students. This is an extraordinary campus. How many of you are here for the first time? A few are here. How many are here for the first time in a long time? Well, if you have been looking around, the place looks different. It's an absolutely beautiful campus right out on the waterfront. It's becoming increasingly attractive to students in the Boston region. It is the most affordable public four-year university, the only public four-year university in the Boston region. And as a result, we're a talent factory. And we really want you to get to know the talent that's here because we have students that are eager to become part of the industries you represent. When we develop things like internship programs, we often turn to the largest employers in Boston, which makes a lot of sense, but there is no reason at all why our students couldn't be incorporated into internship programs that would serve the small business community. And we are hoping that that is one of the things that might come out of this summit. But the most important thing we're doing here this morning is convening experts in the area from all different dimensions, from the state, from the city, from some of the more powerful business organizations in Massachusetts because they too are invested in the small business world, and we want to be sure you have an opportunity to talk with them about how they can support your work and to learn about new programs that are being developed within them that may be beneficial to small business. So to begin, we're going to welcome John Barros, who is the Chief of Economic Development for the City of Boston, to give us a sort of state of the state of small business in the Boston area. Please welcome him.
Good morning. On behalf of Mayor Martin J. Welch, I wanted to say thank you for the invitation to be here. I want to recognize our colleague in state government, Councilor Frank Baker, who was just sitting here. There he is, Frank. Thank you for your leadership around small business and continue to support this neighborhood, but all the small businesses in the city. I also want to say thank you to Chancellor Newman for your leadership on this issue. So as soon as I walked in, she grabbed me and she says, this is going to be the place that's supporting small businesses, right? And she's claimed it. I've heard her. We're on board. We're partnering with UMass Boston to support small businesses in this area, but frankly, small businesses in the entire city of Boston. Congratulations to you. Your leadership, Phil Carver, for the continual friendship and leadership of you and the team in the Community Relations and Economic Development Office. My friend Jay Ash. Jay Ash, for your work. I was going to say Secretary Jay Ash. Can I still say Secretary Jay Ash? You'll always be my secretary. And then the partners that are here to support small businesses. It was mentioned, but I think it's important that the banks continue to be present. I know Eastern Bank is going to be represented on the panel today. Chase Bank and Roxanne Cook, congratulations for your role. Look forward to talk to you on the panel. Main Streets, Boston Main Streets, I know is going to be on the panel. That's really exciting. And then the state's Office of Business Development, which is a critical partner for all of us as we do this work. I want to recognize some of my colleagues here from the city. The Director of Small Business is Natalia Urtubey, who's sitting up here in the front. I know Josh McFadden and Nelson Cunha, who is standing back there at the Office of Economic Development table. Please talk to them about our services. And as electeds walk in, I'll try to recognize them. But I know that we have, in fact, a city that believes and supports small business development. Mayor Walsh formed the Office of Economic Development in 2014 to promote shared prosperity for both residents and businesses by removing barriers to business growth, unlocking innovation in areas that create jobs, and advancing a sustainable growth-based strategy. And small businesses are a critical piece of the entire economic pie. As you've heard, they play an enormous role in our local and national economy. Boston's 40,000 plus small businesses generate around $15 billion in annual revenue, and they are approximately 170,000 jobs, representing roughly 44% of employment and 37% of revenues in the city's private for-profit businesses. Many are owned and operated by immigrants, women, and minorities. It's estimated that for every dollar spent in a local business district, 58 cents will be circulated in that local business, fueling the local economy. In an effort to increase Boston's economic resilience, we are supporting diversification in sectoral strengths so that businesses and residents can adapt to economic shifts. Our priorities stated in Imagine Boston 2030, the city's first citywide plan, is to create an environment in which small businesses can start, grow, and thrive through smart policies, transparent policies and practices, affordable commercial space, accessible capital, and technical assistance. Our own small business plan, which preceded the IB 2030, outlines that we must make the small business economy thrive, enhance neighborhood vibrancy, foster economic and social inclusion and equity. Members of the Small Business Unit for the city are focused on supporting small businesses and neighborhood wealth creation. We think, in fact, that this is a very important strategy for bridging the gap in the racial wealth conversation here in Boston. By offering direct services that include technical assistance, small business loans, facade enhancements, and storefront design, as well as our newly launched mobile economic development business center. Our technical assistance program offered to small businesses in Boston at no charge and pairs businesses with coaches and consultants to address whatever they need to start, build, or grow their business. Let me say it again to the small business folks who are here. Our technical assistance program is offered at no charge. And if we don't have the right consultant in our consultant pool, we will find the right consultant. At this point, though, we have 26 consultants who are ready to work with you and be paired on everything from legal guidance digital marketing to sustainable business planning. Since 2014, 36 small businesses have participated in that program. Our small business loan program is here to help with capital investments you need to make your business a business that is thriving. But we also have 400 capital partners throughout this region ready to work with small businesses. And what we've heard, it is hard to make a connection between the small business with a need and the right capital source and appetite. Just this Saturday, our team is attending a ribbon cutting for a new pharmacy, PharmaLux Pharmacy in Roxbury, which we provided a $50,000 loan to. And that business is going to help not only provide the kind of medicine that is needed in Roxbury, but their angle is mobile. It is about delivering medicine to the people of Roxbury, particularly the elders who can't get out to get them. It's a great strategy. The Restore and Facade design program helps you breathe new life into your store and provides a vibrant facelift that new customers and neighborhoods benefit from. And our Restore program is going to be changed in order to make it a faster, user-friendly process, as we've received a lot of feedback from businesses saying it is not easy to use. We're going to announce the new way that we're going to use it and not burden the businesses with laying out the capital up front. We've heard you. We're changing it. Stay tuned. And I want to remind you that all of these resources and more small business information can be found while we are going around the city doing training and workshops through our new Economic Development Center. These resources will help small business owners and entrepreneurs, and they are critical for the survival of the livelihood of our jobs in Boston. I want to underscore that the lens under which we make policy, create wealth-building programs, and help residents participate successfully in Boston's economy is equity, bottom line. And that goes for all neighborhoods, industries, and policy areas. From the time Mayor Walsh entered office, equity has been at the forefront of the policy agenda, which is why he wanted to make sure that small businesses were being addressed and supported in the same offices that the big businesses were being addressed and supported. Because we feel that small businesses are so important and we cannot have a disparity in how we treat them. He also addressed the city's own procurement practices, immediately looking at the 2003 disparity study that came back majority inconclusive, and signed in 2016 a procurement executive order making a statement on the importance of supporting small businesses through the way the city does business. During this process, and during the time we've been there, after the elimination of the MWBE program at the city in 2004, we recognized that the city just doesn't do enough business with minority and women-owned businesses. In fact, over the last decade and a half, it's hovered somewhere below 2%. We also recognize, however, that when we recently signed an agreement with the state and that allowed us to recognize state women and minority businesses that are certified and city women and minority businesses that are certified under one pool, that in fact we were doing business with more than 6%. Well, we were doing more than 6% of city business with women and minority-owned businesses. Because over the decade and a half, people just haven't certified with the city of Boston. And that makes sense because we don't have an articulated set of goals and programs. And we are making sure to address that through our new sets of efforts that I'm going to quickly outline here, but look forward to talking more about during the panel. The equity order, in fact, for Boston's spending goals for engaging businesses will be further enhanced when we finish our disparity study. But first, procurement with public entities is proven to help small businesses scale and grow at a sustainable rate and build capacity and resumes capacity and resumes of small businesses. That's why Mayor Walsh, in fact, announced and launched this Mobile Economic Development Center in his speech in January. the city's contracting opportunity fairs, and if you haven't been, I see some familiar faces here, some folks have been to them, but if you haven't been to them, you should come to them, and we're rolling them throughout the neighborhoods in the city, are designed to foster fruitful relationships between the City of Boston's departments and women-owned and minority-owned small and local businesses, veteran-owned small and local businesses. At these events, you can expect information on contracting with the city's various departments and networking. We encourage anyone with a new or established small business to attend, learn more, and participate in these contracting opportunities. Our collaboration with Public Works, one of the top spending departments in the city, on recent RFPs and information sessions show that we can in fact take and unbundle some of the city's largest services through RFPs and create opportunities for small businesses. The example is the city took its $275 million contract, 3-year contract for waste management, and was able to unbundle it so we can make sure that small businesses had a part. And one example of a small business unbundle opportunity was the ability to manage our recycling carts, deliver, maintain, and make sure that they were there for residents. These connections are critical. Where our ordinance only tackles the winning bid company for contracts, women and minority-owned businesses can be utilized as subcontractors, working on a portion of jobs, gaining crucial experience, connections, and smart scaling. These partnerships have strengthened our ability to reach out to a broader network of Greater Boston MWBEs for the city and from the city and state certification process. And just to be clear, right now, if you are certified with the city, you are recognized as a certified business with the state. And if you are certified MWBE with the state, you are recognized as a certified MWBE with the city. The net gain of the Office of Economic Development's strengthened role as a driver of capacity building, networking, and coordinating access to state and local contracts, an enhanced partnership with SBA has also increased our ability to provide pipeline for federal contracts. By working with legal regulations of procurement law, we are actively working with private partners such as UMass to ensure our certified companies are being utilized in private businesses and forming partners through other networks. The disparity study is currently in process and it was launched last year, and we anticipate that it will be completed and give us a legal framework that will require to start and support a true supplier diversity program within the city of Boston. Phase 2, a full analysis of the availability of MWBEs who provide services to the city of Boston is underway and will include 4 community meetings that start in September. With results and recommendations from those community meetings for new equity-based policies and programs to help address any disparity findings. The disparity study is being led by the Office of Economic Development, but in partnership with our procurement office, Boston Water and Sewer, DO-IT, Boston Housing Authority, Public Works, and BPDA, or Boston Planning and Development Agency, formerly known as the BRA. In addition, right now, the Department of Neighborhood Development and the Boston Planning and Development Agency are participating in a new set of criteria and language to promote diversity and inclusion and prevent displacement from all requests for proposals released for public land moving forward. The Mayor Walsh announced in October 2018 that we would have inclusive language on all city land that's being disposed of moving forward. The diversity and inclusion policy asks respondents to RFPs for public land to set forth a diversity and inclusion plan that will establish an outreach program aimed at creating increased opportunities for people of color, women, veterans, and participate in so that they could participate in the proposed development project. Proposals shall include the extent to which the proponent plans to include meaningful participation in the fields of construction, design, legal, financing, operation, and importantly, ownership. In fact, we've just rolled out the first proposals, first RFPs with this language in Dudley Square, and all the RFP respondents had diversity on their team across the board, across the board. Some were weighed heavier because it's a scoring process than others, and in fact, those who won had a great amount of diversity, and all of the proponents were minority-owned developers, except for Madison Park, which was the sole respondent to one of the parcels that made sense given the work that they do. I'm excited then to come to work every day to ensure there are opportunities for business owners like you in our city, and to continue to move the needle forward on our progress. I want to hear from you. The mayor wants to hear from you. My team's ready to hear from you and work with you so we can find all of the ways that the city can be helpful in supporting small businesses. Our Economic Development Center is coming to your neighborhood soon, so please visit boston.gov/econdev to find the time and location. It's extremely important to Mayor Walsh that we do this work and we take it seriously every day. Thank you for continuing this conversation and for continuing this conversation, and to UMass for being such a partner. Thank you. Oh, after Jay's talk? Yeah, let me sit down.
Well, if you can measure the mayor's commitment by the quality of the people he's chosen to lead this effort and who've joined us this morning, I think we can all agree it's extremely sincere and very important and exciting. So we are delighted to have you, and I hope that your office will consider us to be a sort of outpost if you need a place to hang your hat when your team is in our neighborhood. So next, we're delighted to welcome Jay Ash, who all of you know as formerly Baker's Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, but he is now in an equally important role as the President and CEO of the Mass Competitive Partnership. The partnership is composed of some of the largest industries in our state and very influential business leaders. But what I'm struck by in talking with Jay is their equal commitment and concern about small businesses. I don't think that's what they're famous for, but it's what he's going to tell us they are here to support. And I think that's an extraordinary opportunity for everyone. So please welcome Jay Ash.
Morning, everyone. Hey, it's great to be with all of you. I was just joking with John Barros that a lot of his facts are in my speech. So John said back that I must have the right facts. So John, thanks very much for that. Thanks for your partnership. It's true I'm no longer in public service, and one of the things that disappoints me about no longer being in public service is that I don't get to work as closely with John. We rolled up our sleeves and tackled lots of opportunities, one more than we lost. I won't make any Bruins jokes, one more than we lost. But John, thanks for your continued service, not only to Boston, but the entire Commonwealth. Chancellor, it's a great pleasure to be here with you, and thank you. I fear that my speech is going to sound a little bit like a Chancellor Newman lecture. So I hope people are taking notes, because it could be a pop quiz at some point, so please be prepared. All right, who's heard enough cliches already this morning? Nobody's raising your hands, really? Okay, good. I have another cliche for you. So, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Who's ever heard that one before? Yeah, thank you. All right, I want to make sure that people are listening. Okay. The thing about cliches, though, is if they're true, you can say them over and over again. So, audience participation time now. What percentage of Massachusetts businesses are small businesses? Bob, you cannot shout this out. Bob Nelson from the SBA, huge champion of small businesses. You can't shout this out, nor can you whisper to your friend. There's not going to be any prizes. Percentage of small businesses of all the businesses in Massachusetts. It's virtually 100%. Virtually. Yes, virtually 100%. 99.5%. If I round it up, it's 100%. Isn't that something? So when you hear about John's comments about how small businesses are so important to the Boston economy, they're also important to the Massachusetts economy, and they're important to the United States economy. So why is the head of a group of 15 of the largest businesses here to speak to you today? Because we recognize that importance makes small businesses vital and, dare I say, essential to the local economy. And so we want to be supportive of the economy. That's my mission. It's not about the individual companies I represent, the 15 largest businesses in Massachusetts, but it's about supporting the economy. And we recognize that it's small businesses that are the backbone of our economy. So small businesses are not only driving growth in the entire economy, they're part of the supply chain for our large businesses, and for services that they're providing services that are better to be provided as an outsourced opportunity as opposed to in-house. Small businesses are also driving innovation. So nationally, small businesses account for 43% of all high-tech employment. And small businesses produce 16 times more patents per employee than large patenting companies do. In places like Massachusetts, here in Massachusetts, where we're #1 nationally and perhaps globally in innovation, evidence of the impact of small businesses on our ecosystem are abounding. And speaking of employment, small businesses over the last 20-year period measured in the census have been responsible for creating 2 out of every 3 net new jobs in the United States. And that's even after accounting for businesses that have failed. So let me say that again. 3 jobs in our economy, every 3 new jobs created in our economy, 2 of them over the last 20 years have been created by small businesses. This is one of the reasons why I said in the opening that small businesses may be the most essential part of a healthy economy. Here in Massachusetts, almost half of the private sector workforce is employed by small businesses. It's about 46%. That's 1.5 million of us, of our family and friends, of our neighbors, making their living thanks to a small business. Small businesses, as we know, drive consumer spending. In the United States, it accounts for nearly 43% of all U.S. payroll dollars, and that's dollars that go out and get spent in the economy. And when we think about taxes, the taxes that government collect in order to provide services come as a result of that payroll tax and what people are spending in the economy. So small businesses are important, not only for our economic success and that of our family and friends, but to be truly competitive, we need to make sure that all of the Commonwealth's cities and towns have vibrant places. And small businesses are creating that vibrancy by providing goods and services, but more importantly, by contributing to our social and civic life. So I've been asked about how are small businesses doing. I hate answering this way. How are small businesses doing? It depends. Don't you hate when somebody answers it back? But it really does depend. If you're in retail, it's a grind competing with online retailers. Heck, even Sears and Toys R Us failed at doing that. So it's a grind. It's a daily grind, and we recognize that. Yet if you're in the tech space, the innovation and startup economy that we're a leader in has to make you excited. If you're in the Berkshires, I was in Western Mass yesterday, you're hunting for customers, and this is going to sound strange to us in Boston. You're not only hunting for customers, you're hunting for a signal to get on the internet, to connect with those customers. Yet if you're in Eastern Mass, well, let's just say that it feels like opportunities are abounding, and certainly what the Walsh administration has been able to do in Boston and John has been able to do on the ground has made that possible. If you own a pizza shop, or some of you who follow me on Twitter, Chris from Brockton is here. You know, I like to frequent ice cream shops. You're competing with Encore for employees. And if you're fortunate enough to find one of those employees, you're thinking about how am I going to possibly be able to afford to pay that employee $15 an hour and still make enough to come take home and take care of my own family. And yet, if you're just out of college and you have a great idea for a new business, incubators and accelerators are all over the place. I was in Salem yesterday at two. I'm sorry, in Springfield yesterday at two of them, and the companies that people who are just doing startups, the companies that they're starting up are really incredible. And here's one of the interesting facts about why they're so excited, not only about what they're doing, but the quickest company to unicorn status. Unicorn is $1 billion value. The quickest company to unicorn status in the history of the United States is the scooter company Bird, which went from zero valuation, a startup, zero valuation, to $1 billion valuation in 8 months. 8 months. No surprise when I was at Valley Venture Mentors in Springfield yesterday that the entrepreneurs who are being recognized, they're so excited because there's so many opportunities if you're a small business and you're in the innovation space. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges that we hear out and around from small businesses. The 10 most severe problems that small businesses have talked about throughout the country are the cost of health insurance. See if these resonate with any of you, right? The cost of health insurance, unreasonable government regulations, certainly not in Boston and certainly not in my administration, but unreasonable government regulations. Federal taxes on business income, uncertainty over economic conditions, tax complexity, uncertainty over government actions, frequent changes in federal tax law and rules, real inventory and personal property taxes, state taxes on business income, and locating qualified employees. Boy, that's a mouthful right there. Sometimes I wonder, how do small businesses get up in the morning and have to face that every single day? And that's why John and I, we've had these conversations about small businesses, why we admire small businesses so much. I did some listening sessions when I was secretary for Governor Baker in 2007, and added to that list that we heard, there were other things that came up, like the lack of centralized information. You know, I think about small businesses all the time and the hats you have to change, right? When you're running a small business, you don't have a big division to hand things off. You got to do this yourself. And boy, wouldn't it be great if there was just one place that you had to go instead of like search and search and search and search. And Chancellor Newman and I have talked about that, and I know that she wants to affect that both in Boston and establish a model for statewide and national use. But that's important. The future of downtowns and main streets. Boston has been working on downtowns and main streets for a while, making sure the neighborhoods are vibrant. But I tell you, I drove around 35,000 miles each year for 4 years on behalf of the governor. Not all downtowns and main streets are doing well. And that's really a concern. Businesses are concerned about their own continuing education needs and how they fit that into their schedules. The maze and variability of building codes and zoning. I was a city manager in Chelsea for 14 years. And before that, I was a planning and development director. I was on the zoning board. The building department reported to me. Boy, was that complex. Access to capital, thank you for all of you that are in the room that are working, and there's so many success stories of providing capital, but the fact of the matter is that lots of small businesses have trouble accessing capital. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And then the cost of government mandates. I mean, it's, we're happy for residents that they continue to get what they need in order to have healthier, more fulfilling lives. But we have to recognize that these mandates fall on somebody. And I sometimes get disappointed that when we in government decide that it's a good idea to mandate something for somebody, that instead of paying it for ourselves, we turn to the business community, especially the small business community, and say, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. And so those are things that I heard. The NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, recently did a survey, and they added some other things, and some of them sound almost silly but important. A plastic bag ban and the impact that that has on small businesses. It's important to think about wage theft and the violation liabilities that exist. There are things that fall on small businesses. And then on the other extreme, the proposed 80% surtax charge, or what's called a millionaire's tax, has many small businesses saying, geez, I'm fighting the good fight every day, and now I'm going to have to pay 80% more in state taxes as a result of that. So, having said that, what we need to recognize is that small businesses here in Massachusetts collectively have said that operating here in the Commonwealth is a pretty good thing. In fact, there is a number of ways of measuring that. But what one of the sources has said is that there are 5 main reasons why small businesses are generally thriving here in Massachusetts. One is the healthy economic environment that we're in. I'll tell you again, as secretary, I drive around town, and some of us like to complain about traffic. I was in a neighboring state's capital city on the major highway. The good news, I was traveling the speed limit. The bad news, it was rush hour. Be careful what you wish for. I actually literally looked down at my dashboard clock to see what time it was because I couldn't believe that I was driving through. Now, John Barros has taken a number of those businesses out of that community and brought them up here, but the fact of the matter is that we have a healthy economy here, and it provides for lots of opportunities. We have nationally and internationally leading sectors of the economy, like the technology sector, life sciences, the financial sectors. We have capital that's chasing them, enlightened banks and great partners in the SBA that help provide that capital. We are and have the best in the nation public school system. And as a result, we have the nation's most educated workforce. Nearly 50% of our residents, and it's higher in Boston, by the way, nearly 50% of our residents have a bachelor's degree. So great opportunities to get really smart, talented people into our businesses. And small businesses also say that they appreciate the strong communities that provide them with tremendous supports. I think we heard from John just what the city of Boston is doing. So, economic factors like that result in Massachusetts being recognized by multiple sources as one of the top places to start up and continue to operate a business. But I got to get back to some of the concerns. So, small businesses, it feels like there's a perpetual increase in health insurance, doesn't it? And taxes and regulations. And large businesses may be better able to deal with those, but not necessarily small businesses. And so small businesses are often trying to reach out and find advice and networks and capital to deal with the advice and the networking opinions that get given to them. But oftentimes it's difficult to find, as I was mentioning, that coordinated spot of information. And what we heard over and over again is if we could just have that comprehensive list that would deal with federal and state and municipal regulations and talk to us about how to comply with licensing and permitting and try to avoid the expenses involved, that would be great. A survey of small businesses across the state found that businesses are most interested in easier access to and increasing awareness of existing programs and less interested in new funding. Tell us what's out there and let us access it. So businesses want assistance and training on how to effectively run their day-to-day operations, and they want how-to programs that are ideally offered after hours and that teach those businesses about how to grow their own business, how to make a new website, how to use social media, and certainly a lot about marketing. They want help about marketing to tourists. They want help in exporting their goods and services, navigating combis and other procurement options, and matchmaking with larger companies. And now, none of us want to talk about the R word, but especially true for small businesses that if and when a recession hits, it's small businesses that really feel the brunt. The last recession and the slow recovery hit small businesses especially hard. In 2014, large banks made $208 billion in small business loans. That's 4 years after the recession had got over. $208 billion. Just before this recession, that number was $328 billion. So, the lack of conventional lending can sometimes lead a bad financial situation into a worse financial situation. If small businesses can't access capital through traditional methods, we know they need that money. They turn to less traditional avenues. Unregulated online lending offers access to funding, but often inhibits long-term business growth by forcing owners to pay very high interest rates. And speaking of high interest rates, businesses that can't access traditional funding will use credit cards at higher interest rates. That's now the second most popular form of external financing after banks and credit union loans. Nationally, and here in Boston, roughly 3 out of every 10 small businesses use credit cards as a form of business financing as recently as 2015. I talked a little bit about workforce. Small businesses employ 1.5 million people. However, we know that small businesses can't find enough employees, both seasonally and otherwise. And with the unemployment rate hovering around 2.9%, it's the tight labor market that provides a concern. We have federal and state mandates, including the grand bargain, which raises the minimum wage rate and provides additional leave options, and that puts pressures on small businesses. Visa issues are putting significant cost pressures on tourism-focused seasonal businesses, but also some of our anchors like technology and life sciences. I was glad to hear John Barrows talk about diversity because it's an important thing that we talk about not only in terms of small businesses, but everything else that we consider as public policy advocates. The challenges that small businesses face are only exacerbated by being a woman or being a person of color in small business. So Massachusetts is home to about 90,000 small businesses that are owned by women and persons of color. That's roughly 13% of all the businesses in Massachusetts. They comprise, in Boston, I think, John, my number was 32% of Boston's businesses, and they're employing about 32,000 people. We're all talking about, and the mayor and John are actually doing things for those businesses, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And we not only need to increase the number of minority-owned businesses, but as we're increasing them, we need to make sure that there's equity and access to services and capital. So I congratulate Mayor Walsh, I congratulate John, City of Boston. They've been true leaders in providing that support, and really theirs is an example that should be emulated. So as I wrap up, I always like to wrap up with the positives. Massachusetts comes in one study I saw, is the second best place to start up a business because of that access to capital, the startup activity that's going on, the quality of life, and the smart people that we have around us. If you need investment, Massachusetts is the place to be. It's snagged a top spot in that measure on VC investment, and the third spot for overall access to capital. Plus, Massachusetts has that highest ranking designation for education and bachelor's degrees, and the quality of life in the labor market here make it an exciting place to be. So if you're a startup, Massachusetts is a place you want to be. Boston is among the United States and world's best cities to be a startup. The annual survey of startups said that the small business satisfaction here in Massachusetts, this is startups and existing businesses, the annual survey done about small businesses in Massachusetts compared to other states around the country, we had a letter grade in 2015 of a D+. Today it's an A-. So small businesses are saying what the leadership that's taking place on the local level, the mayors and other mayors, and on the statewide level with Governor Baker and others is really making a difference. Massachusetts is now 9th overall, tied for 9th overall in terms of that, and the best in New England and in the Northeast. So Yes, there are lots of concerns, and there'll always be lots of concerns, and it's important that we come together in forums like this and talk about what those concerns are, and then redouble our efforts to deal with them. But as many concerns as there are, I'd like to say that there are many more opportunities out there. And so if you're thinking about starting up a business, if you're operating one now, if you're hoping to grow a business, I would respectfully say that small businesses in Massachusetts are actually making it here in Massachusetts. And I'm pleased to be part of that, and the 15 large businesses that I represent want to continue to partner with small businesses and places like UMass Boston that support small businesses to make the possible happen. So thanks, everyone, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you so much, Jay. When you speak of A-, now you're speaking my language here. And we want to be sure A- is exactly as far as we get, if not even further than that, here in our own neighborhood. We're going to have a panel discussion now where we can get down to some of the nitty-gritty, and that I hope will be very useful to you. But before I call the panel up, I want to recognize 3 of our public officials who are here this morning and ask them to stand so everyone can see that they're here. Our Boston City Councilor, Frank Baker. Frank, where are you? Brockton City Councilor Ann Beauregard. Ann? And State Representative Tommy Vitolo. Tommy, welcome to all of you. We're delighted to see our public officials here. So now we're going to have a panel discussion where we're going to hear a little bit of some Q&A from me and then from you, which I hope will be helpful in getting down to some details that I know all of you are going to want to hear. So let me welcome to the podium first Roxanne Cook, Regional Director of Chase Bank. Roxanne, please come and join us. Joyce Stanley, Executive Director of the Dudley Square Main Streets. Welcome. Glenn Lloyd, Executive Director of the Business Equity Initiative. Nat Lee, the COO of the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. And John Waros, we're going to welcome you back, as you know, Chief of Economic Development for the City of Boston. So I've prepared some questions that I hope represent things that you would like to know about, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask, to do some Q&A yourself. So let's start off with Roxanne. Roxanne, as you know very well, one of the major challenges for small businesses is accessing capital. Are there new programs on the horizon that might assist small businesses in accessing capital, and are there specific opportunities for women and minority-owned businesses that you can tell our audience about?
Thank you for the question, and before I answer the question, I want to thank you for just allowing J.P. Morgan Chase to be here. So just to let the audience know a little bit about J.P. Morgan Chase, we're newer in terms of our consumer banking franchise to this marketplace. I have been in this role now for 3 months, but 26 years in the banking industry here in Greater Boston. And one of the things as we bring our consumer and wealth management firm here to Boston, as we know, we need to staff that. And I want to thank UMass Boston. I'm a product of UMass Boston, yes. Emerging Leaders Program. But UMass Boston has also been a partner in providing the staffing and the talent that we need. We've hired 9 of your graduates so far in the past 4 months.
Let's have a round for that. That's amazing.
Our goal is to hire 350 people over the course of the 3 years that we're here to establish 50 branches here in Greater Boston.
We can help
and then
you with
beyond
that,
in New
Roxanne.
England, so we appreciate that. So in terms of access to capital, I want to paint this picture first. Access to capital, and this is one of the cliche, has been the #1 pain point for small businesses. And so I say, the most important piece, probably the foundation, is the business plan, but the fuel for the business is the financing that you need for your business and to start a business. And when we think about women-owned business, in terms of the access to capital, women-owned businesses, typically, they start their company and finance their company on their own, using their own money. So they don't have the leverage that other companies do. They get 2% of the VC funding, and a couple of reasons for that. They haven't established the relationships with these individuals of the VC funding. So it's hard to go in and get the VC funding. And when they do get the VC funding from the 2%, they are really held to a different standard than other people, than other businesses. So they are judged and geared on performance versus others who are judged and geared on potential. So you're really coming at a disadvantage there. So, some of the things that JP Morgan Chase plans to do, we're a partner. We want to be a partner here. And, over the past 3 years, and we've committed over the next couple of years to lend $10 billion to women-owned businesses. So when we talk about lending, that's on the national scale. My role is to make sure that we are getting a piece of the pie here in New England from that $10 billion. There are a couple of things that's important when we talk about access to capital, right? So it's not just giving the money. So it's access to the banking services and the financial information that you need. It's also about, we talked about global supply diversity. So we are committed to making sure there's global diversity, global supply diversity, and women-owned and minority business are part of that conversation and discussion. In fact, we've opened 3 or 4 branches so far, and one of the things that we were determined to do was make sure we had a global diversity in supplier seminar in one of our branches for minority-owned businesses, just to tell them how they can access that resource from our firm. And so over the past couple of years and over the next few, we have given out $679 billion in terms of minority-owned businesses. 300 plus women, minority-owned businesses, has taken advantage across our firm's nation on access and supplier diversity. The other piece is around philanthropy. We want to make sure that we're providing the support and the network and the granting resources. So those are the pillars. One of our strategic pillar from a firm-wide is to make sure that we are expanding women-owned and minority businesses. It's about putting your investment or your money where your mouth is. We can talk about some of the pieces, but what are you doing? Our firm, one of our pillars, our goal, our strategy is to make sure that as the economy grows, we're not leaving anyone behind, so we're putting resources there. So that's what firms have to do, and I can talk more about that as we go, but I want to make sure everyone else has access to information as well and time to speak.
Boy, is that good news. Spectacular. We will all be lining up at your door, Roxanne. Joyce, considering that small business development agencies exist at the city and the state and the federal and nonprofit levels, can you give us some advice, give our audience some advice on how they should navigate and coordinate their engagement with all these different entities?
Okay, so there are a number of sources that we refer people to, from the SBA to the Center for Women in Business to Fields Corner Lab, the City of Boston programs, but it really depends on the kinds of business and what stage they are in their business. So I just want to give you a little profile about Dudley. I have over 200 uses in Dudley, and the majority of them are small businesses, but I do have things like I have a factory, the largest wire and cable factory in New England. I have a supermarket and a bunch of other uses. I have 20 social service agencies, 10 government offices, including like the Social Security office. So I have businesses that push carts, that are incubators, and all kinds of other businesses. 48% of my businesses are immigrants. So speaking many, many different languages, which is another impediment to getting a lot of things done. So I have 19 Somali businesses, 13 Koreans. I have Nigerians, Ethiopians, Egyptians, Russians. So that's another impediment to people being able to access services, getting services that are in their languages, or when they come to like a seminar or different things, having somebody there that can translate for them. So when people come into me and ask me for services, I have to evaluate all of that before I can decide what service to send them to, whether they're going to be able to understand it, whether it's going to be something that they can access at a time when they can use it, because so many of them are 1 to 3 person businesses, and so they don't have time necessarily to get off and do a workshop. So that being said, some of the places that I send them, if they're not able to leave their business or some of the ones that are startups, they're working another job. What I try to get them to do is to go to the SBA online and do their business plan that way. They can go in and they can get a password, and they can go back and work on it as much as they can. And they also can, if necessary, have a family member who speaks better English there with them, or another professional. Some of them use their accountants and those kind of people, and they can be there with them at night or on a Sunday when they're doing their books to help them with that. So the SBA and some of the small business development centers, and there used to be one here, but there's not, I don't think there is a small business center here at UMass anymore.
But there will be, if we get our way, there will be.
Oh, that's good. That's good, because we used to send lots of people here. Another is Center for Women in Enterprise, and even though it's not just for women, they're an excellent source for people to both network, to be able to. They make sure that they're able to run their things by audiences like this. They have pitch contests, but also the networking in that organization. People meet a lot of other businesses that can help them in their business. A third one is the City of Boston. You know, we're Main Streets, even though we're all separate organizations, we're part of the City of Boston network. And we have a lot of programs, technical assistance, so somebody that can go into a business and look over the whole business and decide some of the things they're going to do. And we've had to do that with a number of businesses. Like one example that we're still working with, I have and some of these things take a long time. Everybody's in a hurry, but some of these things take time. I have a business who's a pharmacy, doing very well. Husband goes back to his country, and he's murdered. The wife takes over, and she's been a housewife all these years, but she wants to keep the pharmacy. And so we had to go in and work with her on where is she at as a business? What can we do to help her? What services can we help her with? How can she revamp this whole business? How can she change things like she has, in the front of the pharmacy, they have all these like convenience store things, but with Walgreens up the street, that's not her strength. So her strength is that she delivers. So how can we ramp that up? So those are the kinds of things that the City of Boston program works on, and things like commercial leasing, long-term merchants. A lot of them, up until recently, they still have their tenants at will, and they don't even know how to talk to people about commercial leasing, as well as startups. They always come in and they say, well, how much is the rent? How many hundreds of dollars? And they don't know anything about per square foot rent, or how many square feet they need. So there are a bundle of services available. What we do is try to come in, evaluate a business, and decide which one of that bundle that they need. And there are even services for long-term services like ICIC. Innovation Center is now coming up with a long-term business growth program, and Glenn's program that he's going to tell you about in a few minutes.
Thank you so much. You know, it occurs to me as you're talking that one of the great virtues of UMass Boston is that we have something like 90 languages spoken on this campus. Our students and their families come from all over the world. If you need translation services, it is entirely possible our students could be helpful with that. And I hope all of you out there who have clients and customers who are not native speakers of English and need that support, let me know. Maybe we can work on something that would be useful to you, because we have an extraordinary resource in our students, especially our students who are in the College of Management, who are, studying allied areas of business development, and we should put those languages to use. So thank you, Joyce. That was very helpful. Glenn Lloyd, the Executive Director of the Business Equity Initiative. I'm going to ask you to talk about that initiative before you answer my question, so that people will know about it. But we know that downtown Boston is booming, but economic growth has not been as robust in the neighborhoods that surround our campus, or at least not as much as we would like to see. what is being done to create jobs and investment in small businesses, specifically in our area? Glenn?
Yeah, so first, thank you, Chancellor Newman, for kind of pulling this conversation together. It's never been more critical. And to answer your first piece, just where I sit, I'm actually the executive director for the Foundation for Business Equity, and our first initiative has been the Business Equity Initiative. And we were happy to receive our first kind of chunk of dollars from Eastern Bank. They were a very important first donor. But to answer your question, I mean, let's start where we sit, right? So we're in Dorchester here, and I believe it's about 65% mostly Black and Latino residents. When we moved the neighborhood over, we're 85% Black and Latino. And so, you know, we all know we have a challenge history here in this country. And so we've had inequities, we have structural barriers, we have a lot of challenges, and it falls right back into the entrepreneurs. Black and Latino entrepreneurs don't have the same access. And so when we try to deal with this issue, we got to talk openly about how do we mitigate these issues. And John mentioned earlier about diversity and disparities, and so did Jay. What we've done is we say, look, we're going to go after where are the tools needed for these entrepreneurs to grow. And a lot of us know, and Roxanne mentioned it, it's capital and it's growth capital, right? So how do we get these folks more access to growth capital? So what we've done is we've taken a chunk of the resource and created a growth fund over at the Boston Foundation to open up more access to growth capital for these companies. Not an easy task, and we're all working towards it. We've also said, what else do these companies need? They need customers, right? And they need contracts. You know, John mentioned earlier, you know, the city, less than 2%, and we know we're working towards how do we improve that? But frankly, they're not alone in those low stats, right? When you look at the private sector, it's even worse in some ways. I'm not going to ask you what UMass is doing, but you know, how do we really push the numbers up so that we're actually the folks who have anchor institutions have resources to spend more dollars out with these Black and Latinos are doing it, and so we helped work with the Paysetter Initiative, which is over at the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. Again, hard work, but they're pushing the ball up the hill, getting more of their corporate members to commit more around spending. JP Morgan, we're gonna be talking to you guys about all this stuff too. You're already trying to do it. How do we really change that ratio? And then finally, and Joyce brought it up earlier, it's about capacity building. How do we really provide high quality technical assistance for these entrepreneurs? And someone who's been, you know, at the helm of a business for many years, it's hard work. And you're asked to be an expert of multiple things, right? You know, marketing, operations. So what we've said is that for us, it starts with smart strategy, right? Having a smart strategy and having access to smart minds of how do you really think about where you're going as a company. And so we have strategic advisors that we actually help embed in these companies. We pay them from philanthropic dollars to help subsidize the costs because a lot of our entrepreneurs don't have access to the Bain and the McKinsey type minds, and how do we kind of bring that and embed those into our companies. So when you really look at it, it's a very comprehensive, it's a very deep and individualistic approach to how to really support these companies. And I'll end with this. You know, when I was growing up as an entrepreneur, this is back in the the 90s. When you looked around the landscape, the amount of African American established Black companies, we had more of them. We've gone the other way when we look around. I look at my peer group now. And you have similar issues when you talk about the Latino population. So we have a problem. And so for me, strengthening the entrepreneurial class in our communities is critical because we employ more of our own folks. We get engaged in a different way. And so I think, again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of these conversations and how we really dig in together.
Thank you. Make some absolutely critical points, and I am very interested in learning more about the suppliers to UMass Boston. We are one of the biggest spenders around here. As you probably know, we are constrained by law to give our business to the lowest bidders. That's an audited requirement. So part of what we want to learn is how can we help small businesses survive that procurement process, which is part of what we'll hear about next. And again, if we are successful in spinning up our small and minority business development office back on this campus, procurement training is something we're going to be working on because we know that's key to their business opportunities. And on that note, I'm very pleased to welcome Nat Lee, who is the COO of the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. And Nat, maybe you can talk a little bit about the office itself, but the question for you is relevant to the discussion. Knowing that state agencies award contracts to the lowest bidder, small businesses sometimes find it difficult to compete against large corporations. What is the state doing to help level that playing field so small businesses can place competitive bids for procurement?
Well, first, thank you, Chancellor, for having me here today. Before I answer the questions, I'm going to talk a little bit, very brief overview about the Office of Business Development. So our mission is for the state is to help the business grow and stay in the state. So by doing that, we had our office manage a tax credit program. Most of you, I'm not sure if you're aware, it's called EDIP, Economic Development Incentive Program, and those are geared more toward established business that are expanding in the state. Should they locate in anywhere in the state, create jobs, and we would like, of course, they locate in Gateway City. And aside from that, we also trying to help small business. As you hear from Jay and John Barrows speak earlier, so the backbone of the state are the small businesses. And that come with it, there's a lot of struggle and challenges that small businesses encounter. And we want to make sure that these businesses are aware of the state resources we offer. We work with a lot of partners that I've seen in this room. Bob Nelson's SVA, ICICC. I believe I saw Metro South Chambers, and I'm sure we work with other local organizations. So I encourage all the small business should go to their local organization first. Since there are organizations that receive grant money from the state to provide those type of technical assistance before they look elsewhere, because that's where they would have more support. And so small businesses, one of the challenges is procurement. That's a load of questions, but first I want to clarify that is this necessarily lowest bidder? I can confirm that it's lower bidder, but I believe the Supplier Diversity Office, they have criteria to go through for evaluation. But before I go dig deep into procurement, I want to clarify a couple of things. So there are statewide contracts, there are small business purchasing program, and most of you probably hear about supply diversity plan. So statewide contract, a lot of people, this is where the long process of procurement come in, is that it's like a master contract for the executive office in the state to use. It's a requirement for them to use. And it's optional for municipality, and there are some nonprofit. That's where the long process is. Once you on the statewide contract, is this guaranteed that you get a contract? No. It's for you to be on there. It could be a list of like 5 to 10 or 20 businesses, and you're gonna be those are the business that the executive office would be look at them first, because they are required to select those businesses. And should they have any purchasing requests, and those are the ones they look at. Then there are the supply diversity plans. So any of those business that got selected to be on statewide contract, they have that criteria where they had to meet those supply diversity piece. That's where it is in there. So encouraging small business, if you do not have contract, you should look to prime vendors. Those are the one, work with them, contact with them, because they do need to meet those benchmarks as well. The other one is the small business, the SBPP program. That's much easier. It's requirement you to be 1 year in business, I believe 50 employee or less, or $15 million less in revenue. That's process of being certified through online with the office itself is very straightforward. log onto Combi, the state procurement system. I know it's not as friendly to use, but once you log on there, you should there be any bids coming out, you should get notification. And we do encourage that. I know the office itself is trying to talk with municipalities in town to have them post opportunity on the system itself, so business can see it. And I would like business to sign on to Combi. I know it's not, the most, effective or friendly using platform, but just go on there, just log on, sign on. It would give you a chance to get notification. Seeding Town, if they on there, they can see that, oh, I have business in my region, I should use them. So do that. As for, how to get the small business, as I mentioned, to be competitive, you just have to be very proactive. Yes, you get certified. The first thing is to get certified. The office itself provides free certification. They also accept third-party certification from the City of Boston, CWE, and WeBank, and the Greater New England Minority Supply Development Council. So there's a lot of acronym in there, but get certified. I know it's a process, but get certified. Once you get certified, talk to other businesses, work with each other. Networking events. I know there are sometimes they host by industry. You should go to them. And if you happen to be on a contract, don't wait for them. When I say on a contract, I mean like on the platform, on the system, or a statewide contract, but you don't get an actual contract itself. Go out there, talk, put a name to a face, call up those contract manager, see what else you can do. A lot of people just thought like, oh, I signed my name up into Combi and, it's magic, like you're gonna happen. It's a lot of work for small businesses and, a lot of challenges, but I think that effort needs to be put forth as well. And small businesses is, SBI defined differently, state defined differently, I define differently. There's over 80% of business that has less than 20 employees. So I'm not looking at like 50 or 500, but it's very small and it's vary from region to region. So make good use of other resources like ICIC. I think the Goldman Sachs, they have like 10,000 businesses, small businesses program, or SBA, the E-Emerging Leader. I mean, those are the programs that you should sign yourself up to and commit to it. It's to grow your business. Once you at that stage, and it's easier for you to put out bid to show that you can do the work. There are other state agencies that the procurement system, like UMass Boston, of course they have their own platform for procurement, but if you go to these network or you talk to these resources like local partners, they know where to direct you. And if you see like JP Payne, Chase, they have program like that, work with the private sector as well. Sometimes you can't rely, like your business cannot be just the public sector, you're waiting for contract, right? You should be working with other sectors as well. So be out there.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there will be lots of questions for you, Nat. That's very useful. Finally, John, we had an opportunity to hear a sort of a broad outline from you, which was very useful. But I thought you might like to have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the strategic focus on small business and contracting resources included in the Economic Development Center that the mayor launched in his State of the City address in January.
Thank you. I think I'll make my comments both on the demand side and the supply side in this question of small business contracting with public entities first and get into sort of what we're doing on each. I think it's really important to start the conversation by saying that public municipalities, institutions, that in fact we have laws that we go by that create the framework by which we do procurement. Most of us are really conservative about how we do it, right? And we default to a conservative place. We need to put forth energy and work to move out of the most conservative place to a place of innovation within law in order to push this small business agenda forward and in order to create equity and inclusion in this space of small business contracting. We can't just say, oh, we have 30B, we have 149, and therefore we can't do businesses with minority-owned businesses because they're never going to be the low bidders, right? That's just, from a demand side, we can do more than that. There are ways to stay within the laws, and I applaud the mayor for pushing these last 6 years. It's going to take time, and it's going to, because the default in government for all of us is to play it safe, right? And so I just want to say you're absolutely correct. There are limitations, but there are tools within the limitations, which is why we're doing a disparity study to help, in fact, create the legal framework by which the city can set goals within 30 and within 149 to move contracts in a way that's equitable, because whether it's 6% or whatever the percentage is, it's not enough. And if in fact we're talking about small business growth, we have to be talking about doing business with women-owned businesses. Less than 2% of VC funding goes to women-owned businesses. That is absolutely correct. Similar numbers around minority-owned businesses. Our small businesses are suffering in our neighborhoods, regardless of category of ownership. And so the spend that our large institutions are doing are critical. A disparity study is a beginning for a framework, but you have to have legal consultants that are working with you. The city of Boston has hired Holland & Knight. The mayor hired Holland & Knight to make sure that he had legal advice on how we move forward on this, and we're beginning to make some movement, and we'll probably be announcing new policies very soon, even before this disparity study is over, on how to move the needle on this. Veteran-owned businesses. I mean, just think about the categories that are not getting the kinds of opportunities that they need to get in our city, and we've got to do more. So I just want to urge all anchor institutions, all government entities to do more in this space. I get it. A lot of work to change systems. We all default to conservative approach around laws. We've got to do more for real about this. On the supplier side, on the small business side, there's work to be done. When you think about some of the work that we're doing that came out of our small business report, actually, let me just say this, on the legal side and creating demand, the city of Boston is willing to sit down with any institution, including UMass for sure, for giving our partnership, and talk and share some of the legal resources we have, and talk about how we can do this together. Would love to have partners work with us on this. We're in fact joining 9 other cities across the country in a Living Cities Accelerator to share best practices and work with a different legal team to continue to help us push down the barriers that exist. On the capacity building side, what we've heard and has been clear is connectivity is important. And we know that the small businesses, and it's been said on the panel, you're running a tight small business. You can't just leave and go try to find information and opportunity. It's just difficult, right, to bang on all the doors. When I tried to open up a small restaurant, I found myself at UMass Boston Natural Small Business Center with the SBA support. It was really helpful, but it took me a while. I find myself pretty resourceful, and I'll knock on doors, but it took a while, and it's really difficult. And if you're running a small business, you don't have the time. Oftentimes, our Main Streets folks will go to small business and tell them, here's what's happening, here's a program. And the often response that I hear from our Main Streets directors is they don't have the time. If they leave the shop, they've got to close the door. Right? And so what the city's done, what the mayor's done, is says we need to be out in the neighborhoods, we need to be out in front of small businesses, so we launched a small business economic development center. And we're in these neighborhoods, but we also added capacity to our staff to knock on the doors of small business that are small businesses that are not in our main streets. Right? And how do we sort of we've got to knock on the doors of the businesses that we used to call back streets, right? Light industrial manufacturing businesses, and be able to help them more on the opportunities that we have and connect them to opportunities, not only for contracts, but also access to resources like capital. It is difficult. We've got institutions here, and I know the folks who are sitting up here. I want to applaud J.P. Morgan Chase for your hire of Roxanne. Really amazing, and the work that Glenn is doing is really cutting edge and important. So the money is real. connecting small businesses to the money opportunity is a huge challenge. We heard some of the challenges around just the culture of how you approach institutions like yourselves. You guys are scary. You don't know it, right? I love you guys. You're not that scary. But to our small businesses, these big institutions are really hard to approach. You've got the language barriers, et cetera. So we've got over 400 capital providers out there that our small businesses can approach. It feels like it's a moat that they can't go over. And we've got to do a better job of that. And it's not just language, folks. There's a huge cultural disparity there that exists, both on, as people of color, we've got to demonstrate success where other people demonstrate potential. And that's, studied and shown, and it's something that we've got to do a better job of understanding. And then I also want to say this, joint ventures and partnerships in order to scale or in fact gain experience is a really important thing to be doing. We know more about it in the construction space, and there's some folks who are doing a really good job of demonstrating the success that can be had there, but it can also be done in professional services as well. It can be done in providing goods as well, and we've got to do more around that, and we're trying to do more training in that space. Surety bonding, we know, is an issue. Right? We talk about surety bonding, payroll, certified payroll. Logistics and administration is a huge challenge for small businesses, particularly in an age where distribution matters, right? And so you've got internet, you got online access to businesses, and if you're not connected, and most of our small businesses are not connected, and you're not providing an opportunity and a window to come into your services or goods through the internet, you have cut yourself off from the biggest distribution point right now in our economy. We're in the internet age, and either you're telling people about what you're providing, or you're actually providing it through the internet. And our small businesses need to have that capacity to do that. Many of them lack it. Amazon just announced, in order for you to now do a business with Amazon, I think you've got to be a $10 million services or goods provider. Right? Where in fact, there used to be a platform for small businesses. It's now cut the kind of small businesses that can access that kind of internet distribution points that we need to succeed, and that's really critical. And then the last thing that I'll say, as small businesses try to move, there's a conversation on cannabis that the city is having right now that's important to have, because there are small business opportunities besides selling marijuana. Transportation, security. There's an opportunity around sort of research. So there are opportunities in that industry. And so many people are like, I don't want to sell marijuana. Fine. But can you do a transportation company that is moving it back and forth? Are you into security? Are you into other needs that this new industry is going to provide new demand for, and have you looked at how you can provide some of those? I think those are the types of conversations we need to continue and make sure that we're supporting in our city.
Extraordinarily helpful, very important points. Well, now you all who've been so patient and listening get a chance to ask questions. So please, I saw a hand go up right there. Please, if you could just identify yourself so people know who you are, and then ask your question.
My name is Haywood Fennell. I'm a veteran. I'm a graduate of UMass Boston, an ex-offender. And I want to thank this panel. But I live in District 7, and District 7 is a mess in terms of how these developers come in, develop what they want to develop, and not create the commercial space for young entrepreneurs to be able to enhance the cash flow, revenue generating in our community. But before I go any further, I just want to say that we have relegated our education in the public schools. There is no reason why we should not have a curriculum that teaches our kids languages when they're in kindergarten and go all the way through to break down these barriers that we have between us to keep our communities from being strong. And that includes learning about their culture. Now, you just said, Chancellor, that you have all these students that are bilingual, trilingual, and I would just ask, as a alumni, right? That some thought be given to working with the city of Boston to create a model for people to be able to speak and understand each other, because we don't talk to each other. And we use not being able to speak another language as an excuse not to build. The other thing, getting back to the district, there are a few entrepreneurs there, but they don't own anything. They got to pay rent. I was talking with the mayor a few years ago, and I asked the mayor to give the veterans a building so that we could create a multi-purpose center for veterans and jobs. And he told me it was a great idea. Veterans are an overlooked and underused community resource. I'm involved in education and culture values with youth and families. I never heard anything back from the mayor, and every time I see him, John, I'm asking him about that. Giselle Sterling is the commissioner. Francisco Urino is on the state level. Don't think I haven't been asking those people. But veterans are way down on the scale. My final point. It takes more money to incarcerate a person for 1 year than it does to pay for an education. We have all these men and women locked up, ready to come back home to their communities, and they haven't been given any skills. You said that the market in terms of employment is down, unemployment is down like 2%. I don't deal with figures. I go out and I actually see. And I go into the prisons and I speak to people. We need to be, because I got my first start at college at UMass Boston while I was incarcerated. And I know that we can do better for these men and women to come back into our community and be taxpayers as opposed to tax burdens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you know, we have 600 veterans at any given time on our campus. This is a veteran-friendly campus, and we care a lot about their employment opportunities, and I agree with you, it is an underutilized population. You know, one of the good news things I can mention on the way while the microphone's being delivered, low levels of unemployment are a real magic for those who have been at the back of the queue, because employers don't have a choice. They have to be looking in places they didn't look at before, and the ex-offender community is now one of the prime beneficiaries of very low unemployment rates. But we need to seize that opportunity and make it possible for them to see some upward mobility so that when that inevitable recession comes, they're protected through experience and through skill. But this is this is an almost unprecedented level of opportunity given the tight labor markets. We just need to see it spread to everyone. Yes, please, next.
So, Chancellor, I'm Chris Cooney from the Metro South Chamber of Commerce located
Welcome, Chris.
in the city of Brockton. Thank you. Phil Carver is our kind of ambassador liaison between the university and Brockton,
As he is to many
and we
places.
appreciate his efforts to connect us. And on that same topic, as we listen to the panel, a lot of what is going on in Brockton in development, which is quite a bit, is kind of following and benefiting from what's happened in Boston over the years, especially when you talk about the Main Streets program, some of the business initiatives and support mechanisms, not only from the university here, SBDC and whatnot, but also out of the mayor's office over the years here in Boston. My question is this: as a kind of an outskirts city to Boston, benefiting from the economic development going on here and the growth, I wonder if the university could play a role in spreading some of the best practices and spreading some of the wealth from Boston to some of the surrounding communities. Main Streets has been very successful here under Mayor Menino, and it's been continued under Mayor Walsh. In fact, we've had speakers come down from Main Streets Boston to talk to us in Brockton. But beyond that, some of the permitting, I think in Boston, when a small business wants to expand, like ATS or others, they probably are greeted by a team of folks who say, all right, what is your growth? What are you looking at on this particular parcel? You know, how can we address your issues all at once? And encourage you. Thank you for your interest in expanding. Secondly, provide resources. And third, let them know that, we want to get to yes. As long as integrity is preserved and safety is preserved, we want to get to yes. I think sometimes some of the cities outside the area could learn and benefit by some of the best practices that you guys have already developed as a result of that 20 years ago when small businesses in South Boston were having a hard time, getting some traction. So.
Well, let me just say that the reason why we're holding this gathering is we are looking for opportunities for exactly the kind of engagement you're suggesting. This is a beginning for us, and I have a lot to learn about how we can be helpful as a university and as an employer and as a big spender, so to speak. And we are very intent on our initiatives reaching into the cities and towns around us, not just back into downtown Boston. But maybe we can just talk afterwards about how we can be more helpful. But let me turn to the panel and ask any of you who would like to comment. I think there is a general sense that the city of Boston, the downtown area, is booming. There's all kinds of opportunity. The seaport is growing. But that hasn't entirely reached to areas around us or further south from us. Are there special initiatives, are there outreach efforts we should be thinking about to extend specifically to areas, to the south of us? Anything that any of you want to mention?
Sure, if I could start. I mentioned that we were all in with UMass Boston, and in fact we are, and that is just not talk on this issue and beyond. I really feel like UMass Boston plays a really important role in Boston, in the Commonwealth, and the people that you serve, and in the potential for what we can do together. I also want to recognize that Boston looks to learn from other cities and would love to learn from what others are doing around the Commonwealth so that we can all sort of continue to improve what we're doing. The fact is that we're trying to be better at being more transparent about how you move things in the city. But for a lot of people, it's still dark. It's still like, who do I call? How do I talk to someone? How do I, and so even in some of our neighborhoods, the folks who are most connected might know who to call. And in fact, there is a team at the city that's run by Natalia. Natalia, if you could just stand up so everybody can see who you are, that is ready to help you with your permitting processes. But even some of the folks who come to us, we need to make sure that an early conversation is bridged by the intermediary conversation that gets you to the point where you're pulling permits. And so the journey for small business is not a linear one, and nor is there a single place that I know of that is, in fact, a repository for all the information needed or all of the steps needed in this, which is why a partnership and creating an ecosystem that is tightest is the most important way for us to be able to hand off entrepreneurs in a way that's far more seamless to connect them to resources, the right permitting process, capital, TA, or whatever they need to do the work. But together we can do that. Together the institutions, organizations, and agencies, I think, in the region for sure, but even in our municipalities, can help to make it a more linear, probably won't be linear, a more linear process. But let me be honest, it takes a lot of work by the entrepreneur. And it takes persistence, and it takes effort in order for you to walk through the permitting process, the capital loan process, or whatever else is out there. And I don't want to sugarcoat it for anybody. It's just a lot of work on the entrepreneur in order to get and move from one step to the other. But there is a willingness. The mayor is clear that my job is about moving the small business community forward in Boston, equity and procurement. And the mayor is clear, sir, that I know, sir. I know you for a long time. Veterans matter. Veterans matter. So you and I are going to talk about that center. But the city's not going to run the center. And that's where it comes together. The city will not run the center, nor will the city run your small business startup effort. Right? And the folks who have done it know that. And there's some entrepreneurs I see in the room. You know the city doesn't do it for you. You know agencies don't do it for you. Right? We can be better partners. And that's what we're trying to do, is be better partners. And we're here to help work with other cities and institutions to help figure out how to do that.
Glenn, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, Chris, I just want to first say that the Foundation for Business Equity is New Hampshire down to Rhode Island and kind of west to the Worcester area. So, and we're up to 40 companies right now. So the established companies in your neck of the woods, I think we have some. So we want to continue to support those companies to help grow, the ones that are finding the barriers. I would also suggest that we're also in conversations with other funders to provide this type of approach to the smaller companies, the more emerging companies, because they need smart strategy and advisors, right? They need access to capital in a different way. They need access to contracts in a different way. Some of them may not be ready to, sell into the big corporates, right? So who can we push to make sure that they're buying those products? So that's underway as we speak. So I just want to say too is, we're open for business also because we are a fairly new, innovative approach and concept. And so we're already partnering with the city, and Natalia's, one of our advisory. We're looking forward to partnering with our new friend here, who's making headway, moving up the marketplace. But anyway, so let's in UMass. I mean, we need to figure. We're learning from the field as we speak. We're feeding that information back. How do we get better? And that's what I push my team to do on a daily basis. Is we don't know all the answers. We want to learn from the field and continue to improve. So we want to do it collectively.
So this is just the beginning. This is not the end.
Exactly.
Roxanne, do you want to comment?
And I want to add there the consistent theme and message that you heard up here is an ecosystem. At my Emerging Leaders program here at UMass Boston, one of the things that was important about that program, it talked about the power of collaboration, and not just on the private side, but private and public and government. And that's what you see here. For JP Morgan Chase, one of the reasons why I took this position was their business plan, and the business plan was not just that we're going to establish offices in downtown Boston, right? Because there's going to be saturation there. It was about we are deliberate to know that we're going to have 30% of our branches in LMI communities. That was a determining factor for me. Why? Because we can't leave any communities behind. And so the organizations in private sector who understands that there is a business case for putting branches or businesses in all of our communities, not just the ones that's perceived to be profitable, there's profits to be gained. So we're opening one in Roxbury in the next couple of months. We're looking at other territories in Boston. And then one of my role, because I have the local knowledge, they were smart enough to hire locally, right? The local knowledge is understanding where to have those presence. But it's these conversations that's going to give me the insight to say, yes, let's think about Brockton, maybe not next year, maybe not the following year, but we're in this for the long term. So it's about partnership and collaboration, but also understanding that you're going to win if you look at places where others aren't looking. You're going to be a first adopter. The first adopters that build relationships are the ones who are successful in these communities that's overlooked.
I just wanted to say, I think one of the things from, in terms of things like permitting, which is one of the scariest things, when the ISD changed and they made a website where you can go in and you can tell what kind of business you have, and they give you the steps and the permits that you need, so that you know that you need if you're going to be a restaurant, you have to have the juice permit, the health department permit. You have to get your grease traps, and you have to take a course and all of those things. I think that's helpful. Even people don't realize that aren't from here a lot. They apply for a permit if they need zoning, and they get denied. And it means you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeal, but they just think that they're denied. And so there was a business that she happened to come, because I knew her family, she opened in Jamaica Plain. It took her 8 months to get open in a retail space because of all the running around, and her language is Greek, and all her running around and everything over permits that she didn't understand, and she didn't understand that she could come see us. But by the time she came to see us, she already had her permit. So I think that's one of the things, is getting that information out there so that people understand, and being able to explain to them. So it is a journey, and there's still gaps. Like there's There's no money hardly for fit out. Things like restaurants, people always want restaurants. Very expensive to open. We have one that wants to move to our area. She's doing all right in another area, but she wants to move. She's moving into a new building. The new developers deliver what's called the vanilla box. So she has to come in, and before she even starts her business, she has to spend $600,000 on fit up. So if you're a very small business, that's a deterrent to come into business. Now the owner of the building is willing to put $200,000 in that in, but she still got to come up with $400,000 before she even thinks about running her business. So that's an impediment. There isn't money generally around from that. You know, we used to say that when you're a startup, your money is friends, family, and real estate. And I think that's still true unless you have investments or something like that. So it's still very difficult, and I think that there need to be some funds somewhere to help people with issues like that, or, you know, it's an impediment to them starting or growing their business.
We want to be sure we leave a little bit of time at the end for all of you to visit with our friends who've come and are sitting at the tables to give you advice about exactly these kinds of issues. So we're going to have one last question real quick and wrap this up.
Okay, I'll try to keep it quick. I'm Professor Tony Vandermeer. I've been teaching at UMass for 25 years. And I'm also wearing another hat, that I'm a co-director of TPP, which is the Transformational Prison Project. But I want to sort of go back to what Mr. Fennell sort of was raising, sort of examine the implications of what he was raising. And I think it was very critical because I think it connected to what Lloyd was talking about in terms of how to address the question of equity around the inequities. That I think that Mr. Fennell created a challenge and an opportunity. And that being said is that when he said he's from District 7, he's talking about, I think, what Lloyd referred to is that there used to be more entrepreneurs and there are less now. So the question becomes why? When we're a research institution, right? You know, we try to deal with these inquiries, right? And so, you know, I used to have a printing company in the 90s, and I was in a piano factory. And the rent was crazy, it was obscene. Now, it's impossible, you know, to get rent in the community. And even at Dudley Station, right? And so also it excludes not just the small business, but the social entrepreneurs who are dealing with nonprofits who are also employing people. So the opportunity, as well as the challenges, is that this panel of people here who have represented different entities who probably need to, you know, have more conversations and look at how to create a space that Mr. Fennell was talking about, right? So that small business can have places to go to, right? Veterans, ex-offenders. And part of what the city can do is create a RFP or whatever it is to say, here's some space that we want to deal with so that there's some affordability here for folks who are excluded in the general market. And so how does the bank put some money to it, as well as not just Chase, but Easter, because Easter's doing a good job, in my opinion. And I know that Burroughs has been doing a good job. He's been working with us, you know, with the African American Artists in Residency Program, who's Northeastern is kicked out in the street pretty much, right? So I'm saying we got some good people here, want to do some good things, but it's some policy questions that we have to address and have some vision to say, how do we address this community who's been mostly impacted by the gentrification and the damage that's happening, right, around that. And it's going to be about working with the universities, public universities, the city, the state, and some of these banks to figure out how to put something together to address the question that Mr. Fennell was raising.
Thank you. So I think we're going to let Glenn take that one because it's a powerful question, and then we're going to close off and give you an opportunity to talk to our colleagues at the table. Okay, all right, well, let's just be quick.
I think everyone wants to jump on this one, but
We promised to
so
bring you
I'll
into
be
it.
brief, but it's so layered. I'm so glad of your passion of the question, and I'm just going to tackle one piece of it, which I think is the most critical piece, and that's the capital piece. And so I was going to start with a little bit of a story, because frankly, The banks approach capital a certain way. Let's just be honest, right? It's called the bank box. And a lot of folks like us don't fit into that box. And the numbers show that when you look at where the real dollars are going, right? So how do we open up? And it gets back to, I want to give Haywood a shout out because we need our community leaders to stay strong and to keep pushing us. But you mentioned about development, Haywood. To me, it's all in the same category, which is the fact is that, I hate to say it, but we lack the strength of balance sheets, right? As entrepreneurs and as individuals. And so when you don't have patient capital and you don't have strong balance sheets, you have less flexibility. And so what we've been doing is really pushing the mainstream economic system, which is banks and such, and there are vehicles like CRA and so on and so forth. How do we get lower cost capital, right, that we could be more flexible to bring to bear to help level the playing field? Because it's not the same playing field. So how do we take this capital? And to John's point, entrepreneurship is not for everybody, right? So we need our strong operators, which we continue to need to strengthen, that can actually return that capital back, right? Because otherwise it doesn't work for anybody. So we've been able to trigger some more resources beyond Eastern. So Berkshire Bank just recently committed $1 million into a new fund that we've created with a CDFI, north of Boston, to say, okay, how do we take this capital and make it more creative growth capital? There's more resources out there, and I'm glad you're pushing us, because we should be working with JP, we should be working with the city, we should be working with the state. I see Bob here. How do we really take those resources? We're talking about a few $1 million. It may sound like a lot of money in this room. It's nothing, it's pennies. And really build up. We already have, from our top Black and Latino companies in New England, a pipeline of $4 to $5 million. They need capital. We don't have that capital for them. That's a crime. It's a crime. So what are we doing? We're pushing to try to create these vehicles so that money can move. So I'm glad you pushed that topic, because there's a lot of conversation happening behind the scene, and we kind of opened up the door a little bit. But you have to understand the language, and we have to understand how people make decisions of how this capital flows. So, and then we can talk more after the thing, but kind of help is on its way, but help us get there.
Roxanne, and then John, and then we're going to end. Oh, okay, we just have to.
We gotta be quick.
Yeah. It was me, not Roxanne. I have two challenges around that, and they're short. One is we have all this development land that's going out to developers to build large housing developments. In all of that, in Dudley, I've only been able to get one parcel for a local entrepreneur to be able to build a building for himself and stay there. I only have 5 other businesses that own their spaces, and one's a commercial condo. So you can't stay somewhere in the long term unless you own. And that's what we need to find a way to do to help our entrepreneurs own the land that the land and the building that they're being in. So if you're talking about a building for veterans, it needs to be something that they own for the long term. My second thing is, and what I was saying about people not having money for fit up or not being able to pay the rents, because I have a person who was out of business for a year, and because of his landlord, because of construction problems, we fought to get him back in there, and his landlord raised his rent to 30%, saying he did renovations. So now his rent is, the base rent is $43 a square foot, and with common area fees, because he's in a building with others, he's paying $73 a square foot for 900 square feet in Dudley Square. So what we would like is a program that I give as an example that we did in the South End. When we did the South End Health Center, Flower Bakery was an unknown entity. They did not want to help her get into business. She was just on television, or she wrote a book. And so because the South End Health Center was doing luxury condos, and they also had CVS, we made them subsidize her rent for 5 years so she could get in and she could get started. And look what she's done. But nobody believed in her, and we haven't done that anywhere else. And I am challenging the city, and some of my landlords, like Madison Park Development, is now looking at helping to subsidize some of their tenants. and Nuestra is kind of looking at that in some of the buildings that they're developing. But it needs to be a more standard practice. We need to have the city on board, or some of these financing agencies even put together a fund for that, because you can't get in. But so those are my two challenges to the lending institutions, to you, Glenn, and to John.
Thank
Let's
you.
do something to make sure that our businesses stay in our areas.
Thank you, Joyce. Nat, and then John, and then we're really going to end. Nat, please.
Just a last comment before we end, that just know that the Baker Political Administration is committed to help, business and community throughout the state. Collaboration, I want to mention in terms of education, there are work skill cabinet board that work across with private and public sector to in terms of employment, make sure that we have enough talent in the pool for different type of industry. And also looking for employment, there's mass hire as well. We spent 18 months to rebrand that. Should anybody looking for, jobs, or a company who's need employees, that's this one-stop shop. They connect with, employer throughout the state. They should have the same resource to provide it to you. And also reiterate in collaboration, work with your local economic development. Look to SBDC. There's other quasi-agency, Mascot Capital. I'm sure there are organizations that work across the state, ICIC. Use them, because they're the one who connect you to the right people, and you have people to talk to. Our office has 6 regions. Each region has a regional director, and they should be able to direct you if you need permitting, looking for land, or we have partners who talk to one of us, we should be able to connect you with, and then they help you through the process.
Thank you, Nat. John, last word.
So I appreciate your patience on this. So I'm going to be really brief. I'm going to talk about a next step. The next step is this. The mayor will host a luncheon for anybody who wants to continue to work on this with us. And so the 3 topics that I've heard that I'd like to push forward on is in small business development, particularly in the area of women-owned, minority-owned, and veteran-owned small businesses, track 1. On the question of affordable commercial space and how we deal with gentrification, track 2. And on the 3rd track, we're gonna look at this question of pipeline to prison, training in prison, what's happening in the release process, but let's look at that question of reentry, but also within prison, right? And think about this a little bit, track 3. If you'd like to join us at the luncheon, please contact Professor Vandermeer, whose idea this was. So I'm gonna go to him on the list. I'm gonna go to, or contact Haywood, all right? Or contact Natalia, so that we can invite you to this luncheon. We're going to bring groups together. We're going to talk about next steps in working on these things, because they're very, very important. And I know I'm not going to talk about what the administration's doing now. We'll talk about it then, and we'll work together on this.
I want to thank this panel for extraordinary commentary. Thank you. Let's hear a round for all of them. And to all the people who offered questions. Very, very helpful. Now I want to invite you to join us at the tables who are over here. We've got our colleagues in banking, in economic development, SBA. They are there to be your resources. Thank you so much for coming.